Welcome to the Workology podcast, where we discuss the science and art of the workplace, gain powerful insights, resources, and perspectives on the industries of human resources and recruiting. Join your host, Jessica Miller-Merrill, chief blogger at bloggingforjobs.com, for an in-depth and no-holds-barred look into the future of our most powerful business asset, the employee. And now, welcome your host, Jessica, with this podcast episode of Workology.
Welcome to the Workology podcast. Thank you for making us part of your week. Today's topic is how to create a great work culture. Work culture, such a fun thing to talk about and blog about and just dream about, but really extremely hard to make your organization or your department or your region or your facility a great workplace. Today, we're going to be talking with Josh Berry, a business consultant whose primary area of expertise includes business orientation and talent development. In Josh's words, he helps entrepreneurs start differently. He's an expert in launching and managing startups and currently serves as the managing director for Venture Tech. So we're going to tap into the world of work culture. We'll touch on some small business, maybe the tech community, and maybe larger enterprise too. Josh, welcome to the Workology podcast.
Thanks, Jessica. Very excited to be with you today.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who's Josh Berry?
Okay. First off, the personal side always comes first. Father of four young kids, married my high school sweetheart. Love doing triathlons, bass guitar, and my wife and I have a monthly subscription box business called Family Box that helps families with who are extremely busy to do family devotionals at home. On the personal side of things, a 10-year vet of HR technology and consulting prior to coming here to Venture Tech, where I worked at Talent Plus, built a lot of talent assessments, helped consult organizations, everything from startups all the way to Fortune 100 companies on how to hire and how to retain and promote people to continue to improve performance and culture. Some of the highlights there also included specifically talking about a workplace culture piece that we were consistently, and I think when I left there, had just won our third Great Places to Work national award. And so definitely tried to practice what we preach there. And so that leads me into what I'm doing today as a managing director of Venture Tech, where I'm helping startups and especially non-technical entrepreneurs, those in my case, HR professionals who have a great business idea, see a great market opportunity, and I'm helping them turn those things into reality.
I have the problem, or I guess not a problem, but the ability to come up with lots of ideas. And I call it shitting ideas. They just come out all over the place. So if I had like 17 me's and all the ideas that I have written on my Post-it notes and papers on the wall and the whiteboard, I would probably be busy for the next 5,000 years.
Sure, I bet so too.
But
you know what? Shitting ideas in our world with four little kids comes up with something very different, though. We had that all weekend. So.
Oh God, I love it. So I also have a 6-year-old, so I'm there with you, but probably not in as many numbers. So,
there you go.
Well. So I love the idea, and I told you this before we started recording, like we were just kind of talking through things. I love the idea of recruiters and HR people coming up with an idea to make a process or a way of doing work in our industry better using technology. So I think this is going to be a really fun talk. I think you and I could talk for hours. I mean, you're just a easy to talk to kind of guy, and maybe it's your Midwest roots. I don't know, but
there we go.
You know, I'm a Kansas girl myself. So, well, let's talk a little bit about employee assessments. You mentioned that. How does evaluating employee strengths or weaknesses or determining appropriate recognition or rewards levels or topics relate to great work cultures?
I think it's essential, Jessica. Going back to my previous life, one of Talent Plus's mantras was that a culture is defined by the people you select, promote, and develop. So, each person that you bring in is either going to take you one step closer or one step further away from the culture that you're really trying to create or you're trying to reinforce. On the rewards and recognition side of things, again, I think it's an old adage that what gets measured gets repeated. And so, yeah, you need to put in place recognition rewards to get the culture you desire. Just a small example, pulling from my personal life, just last month, we had a business owner from about a 40-person digital marketing shop approach us, and a strong Christian business owner who wanted to continue to reinforce those values is doing a number of things. He saw our family box idea and decided to make that an employee benefit for his employees there. He would gift them all a certain subscription to family box so that they could continue, since he worked them hard, that they could continue to grow as a family at home. That sort of message that you send in terms of behavior goes so far in continuing to promote exactly the type of culture that you're trying to convey.
I love the subscription box idea. Our family is on a couple different things. I get the plated food
Mm-hmm.
delivery service. It comes to us once a week with two different meals, and that's fabulous. And then the Birchbox, which I like my beauty products, so but I don't like to shop for them, so they just come to me. But I think that's great, and making that an important part of your company culture and saying, hey, work hard, play hard, we care about you, and here's a way to show it. It's not something that takes a ridiculous amount of time or energy. You just have to sign your employees up for the monthly membership delivery.
Yep, absolutely. So back to your point on what do employee assessments mean and how does appropriate rewards and recognition work with work cultures? I think any organizations out there who are trying to think about how do we continue to enhance our company culture, one of the early things that they need to do is assess how they're bringing people in and then what types of behaviors they're reinforcing.
I have a friend who is interviewing for a position for a small company that has never had a human resources person. And immediately she called me and said, hey, what do you think about this? Sidebar, she's never actually worked in human resources, but she does coaching. So she could be qualified for this role. I'm not for certain, but
And she stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Yeah, HR, it's everybody can do it. Not everybody does it well, but what's interesting to me is it's clear in just the few minutes that I'm talking to her that the problem is bigger than just hiring the right people, right? Or firing everyone and starting over. And that really starts with culture. So I guess maybe I'll ask you, where do we start? Let's say that we took on a job and we're in an HR role that culture is a challenge. Is it just a simple employee annual survey, or where do we start, you think?
I think a great place to start is you have to write it down. You can't change or reinforce something if it isn't named. And so many organizations, once they start to scale a little bit, even worse, start to maybe have the words written down somewhere or on a wall, but it isn't owned by the majority of people. And so it's getting it written down so that and when I say it written down, it isn't just going away for a strategic retreat and coming back with a scroll that you've come down from the mountain with, but it's very much about getting several different vantage points from the organization, several different levels in the organization. It's figuring out what the culture is saying that the culture is. And then you're able to start to take a look at those hiring and recognition processes and start to do it. And so after you have it kind of named and written down, and it isn't just some writings on a wall, I think in terms of between hiring and recognition, it's probably on the hiring side, especially if you're in an organization that is routinely hiring people, just because, or even a small one, because those first few hires really have a huge influence on the type of organization you're going to become.
We've done a couple different podcast recordings on employment branding, and so kind of what you're talking about has a lot of similarities in this, where we're sitting down and talking with our employees, taking a big look at who we are and what we want to become, and writing it down and making a commitment. But talking to your workforce versus, as you're saying, like the edict comes down that says we will be a best in choice company that engages our customers and builds great technology. Maybe that's not what this company is all about. Maybe it's about having fun and taking care of customers, or employees might think it's something else completely.
Yeah, but no, I think you're exactly right. And even if there is a disconnect and really leaders think that it should be this way and employees are saying it should be the other way, then at least you have it written down, you know where there is a disconnect and you can start to get to work on it.
Agreed. Otherwise, you're just you have this vision of how you think the world is, and it's completely different than the employees, and that causes a lot of conflict and anger and all sorts of workplace challenges that happen to come into HR offices from time to time.
I think you're right. And it also starts to get into, I think that's when people start talking about subcultures and, are subcultures good or subcultures bad? Especially when you get to that point where you're starting to scale up enough that everybody isn't all just in the same workspace or having lunch together every day. You really have to start to understand what impact those subcultures can have and whether they're going to continue to help the organization grow.
Let's go back a little bit to entrepreneurialism. And when I think about entrepreneurialism, I think of things like services to freeze your ovaries, like perks, or
That's what I think about each day too, Jessica. You're right.
yes,
Thank
I
you.
have a blog post sidebar about ovaries and the workplace and women in
Yeah.
the workplace. But there's unlimited vacation. I mean, Google has that whole idea that you're able to work on passion projects in addition to your regular work, and it's encouraged. But how do you, when we think about entrepreneurs, how do you help entrepreneurs, and how do we take maybe their workplace experiences or the great cultures that they've been in and use those experiences to build a product or to start a path where they are going from corporate HR VP to tech founder or CEO of their own maybe app or product?
Sure. There's a couple things I'll unpack from that question that you asked. One of them is kind of the impact of those side benefits and some of those other things that people throw at it and create in culture. I personally think a lot of those are um, some of them are probably tickets to admission. Some of them are nice frosting on the cake sorts of things, but they don't take the place of great passion in a startup from the leaders. And that's frequently one of the things that we see as you're talking about when other leaders join on board or as those teams start to grow is how consistently can those founders continue to convey that passion. I was just talking to a founder earlier this week who was struggling a little bit with that. They'd grown to about 30 people. And he just, it should be that everybody has the same passion and hence everybody has the same belief and is living the culture. But he was routinely running into a couple of people who were behaving in ways that he didn't think jive with who they were. And I pulled out that old adage to him of the three guys laying bricks and one's laying bricks and one's building a wall and one's building a cathedral. What's the difference between those people? So sometimes it's just an understanding. Sometimes it's just communication. Sometimes it goes back to the hire that we talked about earlier. I truly believed, what we were selling at Talent Plus, which is you need to align what's required in the job and the work environment with what a person is naturally going to want to do. If you get misalignment out of somebody's spontaneous natural behaviors with what's required in the job or the work environment, you're always going to have an uphill battle in terms of creating that sort of engagement and creating that passion around that same idea.
I love that you took the most bizarre question I think I've ever asked on a podcast and put it into something that makes so much more sense than my question. I was sitting as you're talking thinking, where did I come from that question? But I think that hiring has a lot to do with it. I will tell you that as a small business owner myself, it is terrifying to bring on new people because, and I struggle with it because every time you bring on somebody new, the fear is that person doesn't work as hard or as much or is as good at what you do, or they will be able to see your vision through.
No, I think you're exactly right, and that old mantra in the past of being slow to hire, quick to fire sometimes doesn't happen as much either too, because you've made this bet on this person. You only have a team of 4 or 5. You've trained that person up. Hopefully you're much more involved in the hiring process and you found a really great person. But sometimes I've seen entrepreneurs who are a little bit slower to fire or move on in those situations just because of the close connection, and because, well, just keeping this average person around here might be easier than resetting over with a brand new person.
Especially when you have a small team, it's
Absolutely.
scary. Yeah, that person does a lot of different stuff. So you have to kind of weigh in your mind, is it worth taking on extra responsibilities while you hire and onboard that new person, or just keeping that, maybe not so great person on your team because at least they're breathing, called the warm body syndrome.
There you go. You're exactly right.
And I always had that in retail in my HR career, is that people just wanted to hire warm bodies. And my thought was, we need the best people in here to do the job that are going to stick around, not just people that are going to show up. I want somebody who's really going to be excited about the work, whatever it is.
You're See, you and I have so many things in common. I did grocery retail for my primary job up through high school and college, and going back to them later on to try to talk to them about hiring for talent and hiring for culture. Uh, I agree. Getting over that hurdle of, no, we just need 13, 14, 15-year-olds, maybe not 13, but 14 and 15-year-olds to be able to do the job. And actually getting to a point of finding people who care and love what they're doing was always that constant battle.
And in the hourly positions, or even in management for retail or hospitality, it's so hard to find. It's really hard.
Yep.
Well, let's take a little bit of a reset. This is Jessica Miller Merrill, and you're listening to the Workology podcast, powered by Blogging for Jobs. Today's topic, I don't know really what it is anymore, but it's supposed to be how to create a great work culture. I hope this is the most entertaining interview you've ever been on. It's been fun so far. I'm with Josh Berry of Venture Tech, and you can connect with Josh on Twitter at Josh, Josh, _ Berry, Berry. On Twitter. We'll have a link to his Twitter and also his LinkedIn account, so you can connect with him there on the transcript of the podcast, which will be available at bloggingforjobs.com. Just search in the sidebar search section for Josh Berry, and you'll get connected over there. So let's kind of maybe refocus a little bit and talk about culture and your workplace. And when we talk about that, it sounds kind of mysterious. We can't actually touch culture. But how does it manifest itself in the workplace? And does it equal good behavior at work?
Good question. Another mentor once said that, culture, the simplest definition is, culture is how we do things around here. So I think, because of that, culture and behavior are definitely synced. The people you hire and bring in are either going to have same or different behaviors than the ones that you have. What you recognize and what you reward shifts the behavior, which shifts the culture. And so, the culture and how it manifests itself in the workplace is exactly about what people are doing on a day-to-day basis. And are those behaviors matching what we're thinking that the culture is going to be and how people are perceiving it?
I think that the media tends to talk a lot about negative work cultures. I just read a blog post that I shared on Twitter, and I'll link to it in this post when we put the transcript. But it is, I think it's Ohio or Indiana, and it is an employee who is suing their employer because they're transgender, and they were trying to transition to a male, and they were forced at work to be female and wear dresses. So the media seems to come up with the negatives, and I'm going to link to it, so I'm kind of perpetuating this thing. But we need to look beyond the negative work cultures we've witnessed or read about or hearing in the media. Is there something that you can share with our listeners today, maybe one thing that they can do right now to improve culture where they work? And how long should culture take to be fixed? How can we magic? Is there a magic pill for culture?
Is there a magic pill for culture? No, there's not a magic pill for culture. If I go back to it's based upon the people we hire, promote, and develop. Unless you're willing to wipe the slate clean, it's very difficult to turn that ship around. So again, advice, I'd say go back to what we talked about earlier, which is name it. You first got to name it. You first got to understand what values that you're trying to convey. I guess another thought in terms of how to start to shift it is do not overcomplicate it. Simplify it. One of the books that I loved over the past couple of years, and I helped a couple organizations do strategic planning around the model, was Patrick Lencioni's The Advantage. And one of the great things that comes out of that is just the simplification of what are the couple, 2 to 3 values that are most important in our culture. And then what are we doing to reinforce and recognize and push through those sorts of things? I think sometimes, and I can be guilty of this as well as an outside consultant, but we bring in consultants that sometimes overcomplicate what we're doing, to justify kind of what they're getting paid. And I think, what I've learned to do over time with the people with whom I work and what I've helped other people do is just to simplify. It's really working on the things that matter. And so write down those couple simple things and start to really work on that. If you're someone listening to the podcast and you don't feel like you are in a position of influence or authority to be able to, start to push that or make changes in the culture, et cetera, or you can't hire or promote or develop people, I think just on a day-to-day basis, the choices that you are making in terms of the behaviors that you recognize or how you talk about other people or how you talk about different projects or what you bring to the table are all ways that can continue to influence that culture, that's your own little subculture maybe on the team that you're a part of. And hopefully that will continue to start to resonate. But yeah, unfortunately, it is a big ship that takes a little bit of time to turn.
I think that you can make small changes just simply by telling people you appreciate them or saying thank you, especially if you're not in a position of power or maybe you're new or on a new team. One of my favorite things kind of to assess the culture when I was working in the retail world was to sit in the break room for 1 to 2 days when I got a new store where I was overseeing in human resources, and I would wear my little apron, so that might give you an idea of who it might be with. But I would just sit in the break room with a couple magazines, and sometimes it was for 3 or 4 hours. I go get lunch, bring it back, and by the second day, somebody would finally start to say, "Hey, are you new here? You're spending a lot of time in the break room. Can I help you with something?" And then I would say, "Oh, no, it's good. I'm the new human resource manager. I'm assigned to this location." And then sometimes the look on their face was kind of funny, thinking about all the stuff that they had said in the break room. But I knew who was dating who, what managers in the location were respected, and just some basic challenges that they might be facing from my time in the break room.
That's a great example.
Yeah. Unless you're in grocery and that break room is like so tiny.
It was very
or there
tiny.
was not
but
even
you
a
had
break room.
way better food than your apron wielding people. So
yeah. No, you could go out and get produce and make yourself some sushi. Pick it up at the deli counter or something.
Absolutely. So moral of the story from today's podcast is spend more time in the break room, says Jessica.
For sure. Well, I know you're talking about like get to know the people and understand.
Yep.
That's the place where all the commiserating and negativity sort of tends to stem. That and the smoking section are the two areas. And so I'm not a smoker, but I've had team members in my HR organization that were, and that was where I'd say, like, why don't you go out for a smoke? Hang out there and then report back, and then we can kind of start building relationships and get an understanding of the culture of the organization. Take up smoking, spend time in the break room. Those are your 2 learnings for today.
All right.
Yeah. All right. So let's kind of maybe continue back or regroup again. But is there any assessment or training program, or you mentioned The Advantage, which I am adding to my reading list, but is there anything that you could recommend for folks to maybe use as a point of reference or something to get started as they're building or improving the culture in their organization?
Sure. I think, there's a lot of organizations who are doing employee engagement surveys or pulse surveys or whatever the flavor is right now for those organizations. I think there's value in those in terms of getting a read on what the culture is. So explore a few of those. My only caution is to actually do something with the results. Don't just use them as a thermometer and then never act upon any of the things that you learn. The moment that you do that 2 or 3 times, you start to lose the effectiveness of that. The other piece is I think the tool of an engagement survey is just that. It's probably only 10 to 15% of it. And so you won't get me too picky about which survey to use or not use, et cetera. It's all about the implementation and the impact, and then that cycle that you start to create of, hey, we're listening, we're doing something about it, we're involving you in what you do, in creating, differences here, et cetera. And so that's definitely one thing to look at. I think there are plenty of assessments out there nowadays that you can use in the hiring process that get at more of the softer side of everything from culture fit to personality to aptitude. And so exploring the usage of some of those assessments in the hiring process, I think, are also valuable. I kind of like, I've been trying to avoid name dropping, but I kind of like what Roundpeg is doing in terms of some of their approach to getting at culture and engagement, but just in kind of a unique way that doesn't position it in some of the traditional things that are out there.
I think that there should be a company developed that does like employee monitoring software called SquarePeg. So it's like the
Tells you if you're not
contrast.
the right fit.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it's monitoring your, internet activity or how productive you are.
That was a startup idea I had back in 2009. I called it Retention Alarm, and it was monitoring how many times you changed and updated your LinkedIn profile and how many new connections that you had, and et cetera, to be able to do it. I think JobRate is getting close to something like that now, but I completely agree. SquarePeg, that's good.
Yeah. I know there's algorithms and there's a number of sourcing technologies that are looking at how often you update your LinkedIn profile, what things you say on Twitter or whatever, to help sort of send to recruiters that your activities might be that you're looking for a new job or interested in interviewing.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a really fun podcast, Josh. I'm not going to lie. This is probably one of my favorites. I want to thank you for joining us today. Where can people get in touch with you if they want to talk more about culture or learn more about ideas and entrepreneurialism?
I think the best way is definitely through Twitter. I'm pretty responsive on Twitter. Again, that's at Josh_Berry. You can also find more. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty open to accepting invitations if there seems to be a good, compelling reason to follow up on that. And especially if you're someone, shameless plug, if you're an HR professional and see an amazing opportunity for improvement with one of your current processes or technologies, whether you fancy yourself an entrepreneur or not, I'd love to talk with you.
I really will say that I am definitely in the camp and supporting practitioners, HR recruiters, whoever you are. If you have an idea, don't wait for a technology product to build it. Talk with Josh, and he can help steer you in the right direction. So I think there can be something to be said. We are the feet on the street. We're doing the work. And just because we don't know how to code or we aren't, somebody who has cut our teeth in Silicon Valley doesn't mean that we can't help create great new products for the human resources and recruiting industries.
I completely agree. I saw a recent study, and I don't recall where it came from, but it was close to saying that over the 2014, some of the largest raises, when you looked at a classification there, they said 50% of the people were non-technical entrepreneurs or non-technical founders. And so I value so much more somebody with deep market expertise and some connections than somebody who can code right now.
And just for everybody out there, raises refers to...
I'm sorry, raising capital for their particular startup. Yeah.
Just in case.
Good point. It's very different in the HR world.
We're new to this whole HR, like this technology side of the business. Well, thanks again to Josh for joining us. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill, and this is the Workology podcast, where we discuss the science and art of the workplace, HR, and recruitment. Until next time, you can visit Blogging for Jobs to listen to all our previous episodes and access our podcast transcripts. Have a great day, guys.
Production services for the Workology podcast with Jessica.